and just still working on getting a couple things set up here. Good morning, guys. Okay, so I've got a couple things I'm working on here in the background, and then we'll get started. Just take me just a minute. So if you're watching, go ahead and post a comment on the page and let us know where you're hanging out, and say good morning. Let's see. Is that it? Very funny. Sometimes Google Plus just is confusing. As much as I love it, there are just these random little glitchy things that that I wonder about sometimes. I don't know if you guys have that same issue. But yeah, because I think that there was an issue last week when Sandy was hosting, is that for some reason folks weren't able to see the Hangout, and I don't know what was up with that. But everybody seemed to get on okay, and there was lots of comments on the page and that kind of thing. So I think everything went good. But did it go good? I mean, as far as I could tell from watching it afterwards.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, good. Good, good. Okay, so guys, all right, I think I'm ready. There we go. All right, let me jump back over here so I can see everyone. Okay, so good morning, welcome everybody. This is the Saturday Morning Mastermind, and we are the Mindset Mastery Collective, and if you're watching this, you're part of that collective as well. If you haven't already joined our Google Plus community, go ahead and jump over to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That is our Google Plus community where you will automatically get an invitation each time we do our Saturday Morning Mastermind, which is every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Sandy for last week. Sandy was kind enough to host the Hangout for me so that I could go and have a Mother's Day weekend with my daughter and my cousins-in-law, if that makes sense. So we had a really great time. We ended up going to the Georgia Renaissance Festival, and so we went to the Peacock Tea Room and had tea and scones and trifle and all that, and that was really fun. And we tried on all these crazy outfits at the Renaissance Festival, and you know, and the girls, not me, but my daughter and cousins and aunt and all of them, they all got their hair braided because they have a lot longer hair than I do. I could have had a little braid, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do other stuff, so I got some cool jewelry, and we had a lot of fun. That's what it boils down to. But anyway, so last week we were discussing, just let me kind of review for everybody. First of all, if you're brand new here, we are studying the book, The New Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and we are in Chapter 8. And Chapter 8 is actually about developing, or it says, okay, Chapter 8 is the ingredients of the success-type personality and how to acquire them. So basically what it's boiling down to is that each little section in this chapter talks about one particular personality trait that successful people have. And if you want to become a successful person, all you need to do, basically, is develop these traits within yourself. And last week, let me go back a couple of pages here. Okay, so last week we talked about charity, and we also talked about esteem. And as far as charity goes, we aren't talking so much about charity in the way of, you know, financial donations or that sort of thing. We're talking about charity in the way of how you interact with other people in the world. And so one kind of example, I know I wasn't on the Hangout last week, but I wanted to kind of share a couple of examples in my own life of, you know, being charitable toward other people. I know that, you know, Sandy, she mentioned that, you know, in New York, it's always busy, 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 go, 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 and you know, sometimes just taking that extra moment to hold the door open for people is one way of being charitable towards other people and just making a connection with other folks. And you know, for me, I don't have a, you know, that busy of a, you know, area that I'm in, but typically, you know, if I'm out driving around, there's a lot of traffic. And one of the things that tends to happen is you have all these people that are grumpy with each other, and they have all this road rage and all that kind of thing. And you know, for me, my feeling toward other people that are out there on the road is I know they all have their own lives. They all have these things that are going on with them. They're hurrying, they're rushing to get here, trying to get there, trying to get their kids off to soccer practice, and trying to get to work on time, and trying to get breakfast at the Chick-fil-A, you know, and they have all these different things that are going on with them. And so if someone happens to cut in front of me, I don't sit there and get mad at them, because I realize that, you know, we all have these things going on. So that's one way of being charitable towards other people, is to realize, to just kind of look at the world from other people's points of view and realize that, you know, just because someone cuts you off does not mean that, you know, they're trying to attack you in some way. You know, it makes sense. And so, you know, we have all these little things in our lives that we got to just kind of take a step back and try and see things from other people's point of view. And that's kind of how my interpretation of, you know, being charitable toward other people. And are you guys hearing and seeing me okay? I feel like I'm kind of freezing up a little bit there.
No, you're good.
Good? Okay. All right. So maybe my computer's just being a little wonky. So what are your guys' thoughts on the charity thing?
Yeah, basically just, I don't know, from my standpoint, I try to follow the biblical example of do unto others as you'd have them to do unto you. You know, I mean, if you want to be treated well, then, you know, treat other people well, basically. I mean, really, that's my standpoint, but that's what it all boils down to. And yeah, there's always going to be the occasional grump and or whatever. And, you know, sometimes my attitude's bad, you know, and have to stop and, you know, back up a little bit and just realize that, you know, you don't always know what a situation's going on in a person's life. You know, possibly they may have just broke up with a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, you know, or some really traumatic situation may have happened in their life. And like you said, Samantha, they're not necessarily attacking you, but they're just kind of kicking the dog of life, so to speak, you know. Yeah. But basically, yeah, that's what really, from my standpoint, that's what it all comes down to, is just treating other people in the same way that you would like to be treated, in courteous manner, and just plain being a nice human being, for lack of a better a better explanation of it. So, Catherine?
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. Just being, you know, we take everything so personally. And my solution to road rage, of course, I was a nurse for 20 years, so my solution to road rage is, you know, to have an injured child in your car trying to get to the hospital, and you'll never have road rage again, you know, for somebody cutting you off, because you never know what's going on in that car and why they need to get around you. So road rage, fortunately for me, is not an issue, but I know it is for a lot of people, but it's only because they take it so seriously. You know, if they even took a second to consider that there is a reason that that person has to get around them in this moment, you know, then it wouldn't even faze them, but they automatically go into this whole mind play, oh, how rude and how inconsiderate and this and that, and your time's more important than mine, and, you know, they make this big hullabaloo out of it, you know. And I think people do that with a lot of things, actually, not just road rage. But one of the things that I like to do, which I'm weird, so I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else, okay, but I'm just saying, when I come across a situation where something is really grating against me, I take that as an opportunity to, like, if somebody is kind of irritating me because they seem real needy, or I don't know, something like that, then I take that as an opportunity to look at myself and say, wow, when I'm feeling that way, what is it about me? Like, I don't let myself feel that way. That's something about myself that I'm rejecting. And so I really take that as an opportunity to love that part of myself. I may still not love that other person, but I take that as an opportunity to love myself, love that needy part of myself, or that angry part of myself, or that impatient or frustrated part of myself, because I know that these things that irritate me about other people are really just those things in myself that I'm not loving. And I grew up with this whole be strong, be stoic, you know, never show any anything, any fear, any weakness, anything. I know that runs strong in me, and that's something that it's good because it gets me through situations, but it's also like very uncaring to myself in a way. I don't allow myself to be human and have regular, normal human emotions like that, you know. So there's a whole balance to it, but it all boils down to what you said, Dan, is just having common courtesy and treating other people like humans. So that's all.
That's fine. I was just unmuting myself. You know, Karen, or Catherine, what am I saying? It's interesting that you bring up that subject of, you know, always having that kind of strong sense of self and, you know, I can handle anything. I've got this. You know, I don't need anybody to do anything for me, or, you know, that kind of thing. You know, because what's interesting for me is that, you know, I kind of have that same thing, and when I see other people, you know, kind of complaining and whining and you know they're upset because the whole world's falling apart and this and that and the other, you know, I really have to take a step back and go, okay, it's okay for them to be that way because, you know, they're in a different place than what I am. They've had different experiences and they're in a different level of growth, or, you know, anything along that lines. And so that's kind of one of those things that I work on a daily basis, because I know not everybody's in the same place. And, you know, I wanted to kind of just mention, I wanted to read through a couple of parts in this section that it was kind of, that to kind of bring this all home as far as the successful trait personality. So it says, successful personalities have interest in and regard for other people. They have a respect for other people's problems and needs. They respect the dignity of human personality and deal with other people as if they were human beings rather than pawns in their own game. They recognize that every person is a child of God and is a unique individual that deserves some dignity and respect. Then it goes on to say, it is a psychological fact that our feelings about ourselves tend to correspond about feelings about other people. When a person begins to feel more charitable about others, he invariably begins to feel more charitable toward himself. One of the best known methods for getting over a feeling of guilt is to stop condemning other people in your own mind. Stop judging them, stop blaming them, stop hating them for their mistakes. You will develop a better and more adequate self-image when you begin to feel that other people are more worthy. And, you know, and I thought that that was just a really powerful kind of thing to drive home to us, is that, you know, if you're having feelings toward other people that are unpleasant or that are, you know, less than friendly or you know, frustrating with other folks, is that you're obviously, there's something inside of you that you need to work on in order to kind of release that from your life. And then you know, one thing that I've noticed over time, and we can kind of go back to the whole traffic and road rage thing, because that happens to just be in my mind right now. I don't have as much of that happen with me. When I'm driving down the road, people don't cut me off as much. They don't, you know, drive all crazy around me. I don't have people honking at me. I don't have all those things because I don't attract that into my life, if that makes sense. Or maybe I just don't recognize it because I don't feel that inside of myself, you know. And for an example, you know, the other day I was driving my daughter over to work, and I had these thoughts going on in my head. I was thinking about, I don't even remember what it was, but I was just thinking about something, and all of a sudden I looked up and she's like, "Mom, you're sitting in a green light." And we're just sitting there, and I look in the rearview mirror and there's all this traffic behind me, and the cars were all way ahead of me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, sorry." So, you know, I took off, I started going, but not one person honked at me. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, you know, I wonder if because I would not honk at a person, you know, that maybe I'm not getting honked at because I'm not attracting that in my life. Make sense? So just kind of a thought, something to think about. Okay, so let's kind of go on to the next section. It was talking about esteem, and let's see here. This one, I had less thoughts come up about this one for some reason. I'm just going to kind of read through the prescription, or part of the prescription. It was talking about, oh, okay, here we go. Stop carrying around a mental picture of yourself as a person less capable than others by making unfair apples to oranges comparisons. And then it also says in here, is not the human being the most marvelous creation of all? This appreciation of your own worth is not egotism unless you assume that you made yourself and should take some credit. And it says the biggest secret of self-esteem is this, is begin to appreciate other people more, show respect for any human being merely because he or she is a child of God and therefore a thing of value. And just like what was talking about the charity part, is the esteem part, is that when you start to have more respect for other people, you'll also have more respect for yourself. And when you start to appreciate other people, you will start to appreciate yourself more. And, you know, I know that this is something that comes up a lot of times. We all have these little self-doubt things going on in our brain that are, you know, that will, you know, tell us that, you know, we can't accomplish something, or they'll tell us that we're not worthy of something, or that, you know, we can't do this, or we aren't capable of that, or, you know, whatever it is. And just remembering that we are an amazing creation, and maybe just kind of having that as, you know, posted on your walls, be like, I am one of the most amazing creatures in the whole world. I mean, we think about it, we look out here and we see all the trees, and we see the birds, and we see the oceans, and we see the Grand Canyon, or, you know, and we see all these wonderful things out there in the world that are just absolutely amazing. And like it was saying, you can stand in awe of all of this. What in the world is it that is causing us to think less of ourselves? Because we are just as amazing, if not more amazing. We're much more complex, obviously. And just kind of take that minute and remember that, you know, when you feel those thoughts coming into your head that are trying to hold you back in some ways, be like, you know what, wait a second, I'm awesome, I'm wonderful, I'm this creature that was created that is capable of anything if I just allow myself to be that way. So what do you guys think on the esteem side of it?
Yeah, basically, you know, there are no duplicates. We're like snowflakes in the sense that there are no duplicates. Every single human being is a unique individual. But a tape I was listening to, that really super old tape that I've got, and the speaker on there, he's talking about whenever you compare yourself to somebody else, invariably you compare yourself at your weakest point with somebody else's strongest point, and that always widens the gap, you know. But I've been going through some Bob Proctor trainings, you know, and now my mind just went blank. Sorry. What he's talking about on there. Sorry, I'm just drawing a total blank. What I was just going to say, it was there. But basically, when you compare yourself to somebody else, that you know, we tend to compare ourselves. You look at somebody and you think, well, gee whiz, I really wish that I was like that person. I wish I had that personality trait that they've got. But you don't know the depth of what type of struggle they may have gone through in order to develop that particular personality trait, and that you haven't gone through that yet yourself, and that when you compare yourself, really you compare yourself in a weak point in your life, comparing somebody else to a strong point in their life, and that really widens out the gap. And that, I remember what it was, that there are things that we're all inferior to somebody else and we're all superior to somebody else. It just depends on the area that you're comparing yourself in. Like, for instance, I was a house painter for 36 years, and I'm not bragging, I'm a good painter. I'm a darn good painter, and I'm not bragging. But if you do something for 36 years, then you better be good at it. You know, does that make sense? So somebody else, you know, I mean, I used to make fun of homeowners that paint their own house because they get paint all over the light switches, and they don't take light switches off or whatever. Well, see, I was a professional in that area, so I better be better than the average person in that one area. But you know what? I never cut a dog's hair in my life, so Samantha, you'd be 100 times superior to me in grooming a dog, because I've never done it before. I cut my son's hair one time. He asked me to cut his hair, and he got really mad at me afterwards, and he never asked me to cut it again because that's not what I do. So, anyways, yeah, just that in every area of life there is something that somebody else would be superior to you, but in every area of life there would be something that you would be superior to somebody else in. It just depends on where your interest lies. You've developed yourself. And so, Catherine, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, comparing gets us in a lot of trouble, Dan. It really does. And everybody does it, you know. Either way, I mean, if you think about it, whether you're comparing yourself and you're elevating yourself, then that means you're putting the other person down. And if you're putting yourself down, you're putting the other, I mean, either way, it's like a losing situation. I don't know how we got into this. I mean, I think we have to obviously have things to strive for, and we need to compare, but we need to compare ourselves to ourselves. Like, I'll be a better person today than I was yesterday, not I'll be a better person than Dan today than I was yesterday, you know, but we need to compare ourselves to ourselves and work on building our own skills. And the minute that we start, you know, I think that's really rampant in internet marketing specifically, and because people coming into the internet marketing arena, they see these people that have huge amounts of success, and they think that, you know, they can get on and watch a hangout and read an email and maybe read a motivation book and they're going to have that same success. And it just doesn't happen that way. They don't see the years of struggle that those people have gone through to get to where they're at. They don't see the daily dedication that those people take to work on their mindset. And I have to say, you know, mindset, from everything I've learned, mindset is everything. It's everything about succeeding in business. It's everything about your health. I mean, I've struggled with health issues for a long time, and I'm not saying it's all in your mind. I mean, you have physical symptoms, but I was just speaking with a friend yesterday who had a knee surgery not too long ago, and I was checking up on her and seeing how she was doing, and she said she was doing better. It's been about a year now, I guess, actually. Time flies. But but she said it was doing better, but that it would never, you know, she feels like it would never get any better than what it is now. And I'm like, don't say that. You know, I'm twice out of a wheelchair. Your knee can heal, man. I'm serious. You know, you have to change your mindset about that. Don't tell your body it can't heal, because it can. At the same time, don't keep trying to heal your body, because you'll keep making stuff for it to heal. So it's sort of a tricky situation. That's why these books and learning from these masters is so wonderful, because we really have to learn how to control our thought processes and what we focus on. It really is a science, and you really can learn how to shift things just by shifting your mindset. And that's why we're here every Saturday morning, to try to help people see that what they focus on, whether it's good or bad, is really going to come around. So we have to learn how to focus on the right stuff, or you're going to be like me and just manifest a whole big mess. I'm telling you. But I got it figured out, or at least I'm working on it.
Can't hear you, Samantha.
Uh-oh, we can't hear her.
No, I can't. Samantha, we can't hear you.
Come on.
There you are.
it is.
All right, there you go.
Okay. Wow, my computer started freezing up on me. I couldn't unmute myself. The button wouldn't even show up. All right,
wow.
so I think I'm better now. That was weird. Real quick, before we move into this next section, I do want to just kind of welcome the folks that have commented on the page. So welcome Susan, Danielle, and Peter. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And if anybody else is hanging out there with us and you're listening in but haven't commented on the event page, then jump on there and just tell us where you're listening from. You know, Dan, it was interesting. You were sharing about the painting, and of course, you know, you're an excellent painter from all those years of work, and you know, of course, for a lot of years, I was a very good dog stylist, and you know, and that's so true. That's the thing that is key in so many areas. And when you start to look back at yourself and see, okay, you know, I'm really good at this and this and this and this, and you know, I don't have to be good at being a painter, you know. And what's funny about the whole painting thing, I mean, you know, I can compare myself to you, and you would just laugh, but you know, because I'm not a painter at all. And as a matter of fact, I cannot even be in the room with other people painting without getting paint on me. You know, they won't get paint on them, but it'll be all over me. And you know, so it's funny how that works. But you know, and Catherine, I think that, you know, what you were saying is that you got to realize that, you know, when you compare yourself to other people, that you are, you know, you literally are setting yourself up to feel failure in your life, you know, and you don't, that's not what you want. You want to be able to feel success. And so this next section we're going to go into is going to talk about self-confidence and how you can improve your level of confidence. So I'm just going to, unless you guys have something else you want to add before we move forward. Okay, so self-confidence. Confidence is built on an experience of success. When we first begin any undertaking, we are likely to have little confidence because we have not learned from experience that we can succeed. This is true of learning to ride a bicycle, speaking in public, or perform surgery. It is literally true that success breeds success. Even a small success can be used as a stepping stone to a greater one. Managers of boxers are very careful to match them so that they can have a graduated series of successful experiences. We can use the same technique, starting gradually, and experience success at first on a small scale. Another important technique is to form the habit of remembering past successes and forgetting failures. This is the way both electronic computer and the human brain are supposed to operate. Practice improves skill and success in basketball, golf, horseshoe pitching, or salesmanship, but not because repetition has any value in itself. If it did, we would learn our errors instead of our hits. A person learning to pitch horseshoes, for example, will miss the stake many more times than he will hit it. If mere repetition were the answer to improved skill, his practice should make him more expert at missing, since this is what he practiced most. However, although his misses may outnumber his hits 10 to 1, through practice his misses gradually diminish and his hits come more and more frequently. This is because the computer in his brain remembers and reinforces his successful attempts and forgets the misses. This is the way that both an electronic computer and our own success mechanisms learn to succeed. Yet, what do most of us do? We destroy our self-confidence by remembering past failures and forgetting about past successes. We not only remember failures, we impress them upon our minds with emotion. We condemn ourselves. We flay ourselves with shame and remorse. Both are highly egotistical, self-centered emotions, and self-confidence disappears. It doesn't matter how many times you have failed in the past. What matters is the successful attempt, which should be remembered, reinforced, and dwelt upon. Excuse me, guys. The great inventor and industrialist Charles Kettering said that any man who wants to be a scientist must be willing to fail 99 times before he succeeds once, and suffer no esteem damage because of it. This could be said of just about any field of endeavor. That does not mean you must actually operate at that ratio, by the way, but you must be willing to, if need be, and as he suggested, suffer no self-image damage by doing so. When we observe others' successes, we often never see or take note of many zigzags they took to arrive. When the famous Hollywood actress takes the Oscar in hand and delivers her acceptance speech, we forget all about the string of clinky for movies she appeared in when that were ridiculed by critics and quickly rejected by the public. When the best-selling author's book is the talk of the airwaves and selling like hotcakes, we never contemplate the shoebox full of rejection slips stored in his home or the mountains of torn-up paper from unsatisfactory drafts, rewrites, drafts, and more rewrites that precede the book now on the shelf. Almost every bright and shining success has in its shadow a long list of disappointments, frustrations, and humiliations. Why should you expect otherwise? The success personality takes things in stride. Prescription. Use errors and mistakes as a way to learning. Then dismiss them from your mind. Deliberately remember and picture to yourself past successes. Everyone has succeeded sometime at something, especially when beginning a new task. Call up the feelings you experienced in some past success, however small it might have been. Sorry guys, I'm starting to get kind of a tickle in the back of my throat that isn't going away. Would somebody else like to read the next section?
Yeah, I can read it.
Oh, go ahead, Dan. You want to?
Catherine, you're welcome to read it if you want to.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
Go ahead. Go for it.
All right. Self-acceptance. In the book, made into the popular movie The Talented Mr. Ripley, the main character is a tortured and inferiority complex-laden young man, so unhappy with himself, so unwilling to accept himself, and so envious of others that he murders another man of greater financial means and attempts to take over his life, even to step into his relationships with the dead man's girlfriend and family. Fortunately, few people act on their lack of self-acceptance in such a violent and antisocial manner. More typical, such a person murders himself, slowly rather than suddenly, sometimes with alcohol or drug abuse, sometimes with less obvious forms of gradual self-destruction. Many, to quote Thoreau, live out their lives in quiet desperation. No real success or genuine happiness is possible until a person gains some degree of self-acceptance. The most miserable and tortured people in the world are those who are continually straining and striving to convince themselves and others that they are something other than what they basically are. And there is no relief and satisfaction like what comes when you finally give up the shams and pretenses and are willing to be yourself. Success, which comes from self-expression, often eludes you when you strive and strain to be somebody, and often comes almost of its own accord when you become willing to relax and be yourself. Changing your self-image does not mean changing yourself, but changing your own mental picture, your own estimation, conception, and realization of that self. The amazing results that follow from developing an adequate and realistic self-image come about not as a result of self-transformation, but from self-realization and self-revelation. Yourself, right now, is what it has always been and all that it can ever be. You did not create it. You cannot change it. You can, however, realize it and make the most of what already is by gaining a true mental picture of your actual self. There's no use straining to be somebody. You are what you are now. You are somebody, not because you've made $1 million or drive the biggest car on the block or win at bridge, but because God created you in His own image. Most of us are better, wiser, stronger, more competent right now than we realize. Creating a better self-image does not create new abilities, talents, powers. It realizes and utilizes them. We can change our personality, but not our basic self. Personality is a tool, an outlet, a focal point of the self that we use in dealing with the world. It is the sum total of our habits, attitudes, and learned skills which we use as a method of expressing ourselves. There's a lot of good stuff in there, so I think we should stop and maybe talk about some of that. What do you think?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that, Dan? Did anything jump out at you?
Yeah, I marked a few things. Yeah, but the success person takes things in stride, and self-acceptance. I guess, I can't, going back to some of the stuff we was talking about earlier, I can remember a time when I don't know, I might have been 14 or 15 years old, and I was standing there watching a guy, and he had a brush in his hand, and he was cutting in um, some wood right along a window, a pane of glass. And as I stood there and watched him, his name was Louie, and I said, "Gosh, Louie," I said, "I could never do what you're doing, you know." And he was cutting just a nice, beautiful straight line down this wood right at the edge of the glass. He wasn't getting anything out under the glass. And I made that statement to him. And he looked at me. He says, "Oh no," he says, "you can do it." He says, "You just need practice." And when I first started painting, I was only around 13 years old when I first started painting. So I painted for a long time, but with time, I was every bit as good of a painter as he was, and I could do the same thing that he was doing. But I had to pay a price to get to that point, and that price was I had to do a lot of really crappy paint jobs. When I first started spraying, everything I sprayed was a solid mass of runs, and then I had to go back and sand out all the runs because I didn't know how to control the paint. I didn't know how to control the pressure of the gun and all that type of thing. And so really the only way to get to the point where I could be proud of the paint job that I turned out was to turn out a lot of really lousy paint jobs and really make a lot of mistakes. And to be willing to keep going through and marching through those mistakes and forgetting the past failures and to keep concentrating on the future success. And that was the challenge. And now, at the age I'm at now, I mentioned last week that I gave up the painting business a few years ago. And I went from being at the top of my game and identifying 100% who I was identified with, I'm the painter, and that's what I am, that's who I am. And to suddenly be into a position where I'm not a painter anymore. And I went through a period of time, a struggle in my life was that what I had always been in my adult life, I'm not that anymore. And to come to a point where, a few years ago when I started going online, I was a two-finger typist. I used those two fingers right there to type. And anytime I needed to find a key, I had to go looking for it. I didn't know where the A was or the B, the C. And every time I tried to type something, I had to go looking for it. And so for the last couple of years, really, I had to develop myself in my typing skills where, when I first started typing, it was it was atrocious. Spell check was a constant thing, and I still use it, but I haven't to the point where I can pretty much type a sentence with all my fingers, and maybe only have to go back and correct one or two words, where before it was every single word. And that took time. It took time to develop that skill, and not that I've arrived, because I'm still developing it, and I've taught myself how to type. So I'm sure somebody that really types for a living, they would probably shudder if they sit and watch me, because I'm sure my technique is terrible, but it works for me. So I guess you're never too old, I guess, to learn a new skill and to do something different. But in the meantime, yeah, you strive for success, but don't beat yourself up if you haven't arrived yet, And let's see, I did mark several things here. Yeah, changing your self-image does not mean changing yourself, but changing your own mental picture of your own estimation or conception and realization of that self. And some things that I've been really learning that, and see if I can put it into words here, that quite often when it's like if you have an accident, there's a car accident, and 10 different people see the accident, that when the police would interview, or the real insurance company would interview each one of the persons, they would give 10 different versions of what happened. And quite often, what happens to us in our life, I guess going along with what we was talking about at the very beginning of the hangout, was that if there was a road rage incident and somebody else was trying to get around you and they were all hacked off, that you don't know what's going on in their life, and that more often than not, the actual view that we take is not necessarily the truth about what's going on. It's our own conception or our own version of what's going on. So, like when you was, I guess, in high school and went to the school dance or whatever, and you wanted to dance with the person that was across the room that was the best looking person in the room, but you didn't have the self-confidence to go over there and ask that person to dance or whatever, because you're, it's like in my own particular case, it was what I grew up with, the situations that I grew up in. I didn't have the confidence to necessarily do that because I didn't think that I was as good as that person over there, and I didn't deserve it, so to speak. So I don't know. I'm just kind of rattling on here, but really, what goes on in our lives is not necessarily the truth, but what our own perception is of the truth. And if our perception is off, then that's where, reading these books, listening to the audios that we listen to, doing all the things that we do, or at least what I'm doing, is I'm trying to learn the truth about myself, who I am, what I'm capable of actually doing, and not being, where I grew up, or for so many years I was a painter, and I identified myself as a painter, and I was happy with myself because I did have a successful painting business. But then when I didn't have that anymore, that don't mean I'm a failure. That just means I'm not a painter anymore, and that I can go on and either teach myself how to type, or teach myself how to do sales, teach myself how to navigate the internet, and to use it as a tool rather than just something to sit there and surf and waste time all day. That I can actually use that in a business sense and use it for my own good. And that my perception is that just because I'm not a painter anymore doesn't make me a loser. It just means I'm not a painter anymore, and I'm still unique, like that snowflake that we talked about earlier, that I'm still a unique individual, and I still got talents and abilities. There's new things that I can learn, and to forget about the perception of the past mistakes, past failures. And, if you drive down the road with your eye constantly in the rearview mirror, then you're probably going to get into an accident. We need to look through the windshield, and it's the same way with life. If you keep looking in the rearview mirror of life, then you're living in the past. But really, we got to look through the windshield of life into the future, and that's what goals and dreams, that's what future achievement, that's what it's all about, is moving forward in life, not looking in the rearview mirror constantly. So anyway, I'll pass it over to somebody else.
Did you want to say something there, Missy? Samantha?
Yeah, I'm having slow
Are you
computer
having
problems.
trouble? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm having a little bit of issues. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate what you were saying with that, Dan, of, you were an awesome painter, and yet you're switching over into a new line of work, and you have to it's like you have to start over. But yet, at the same time, it talks about, remembering that you are capable of success, because, if you can accomplish this one thing and become great at it, there's no reason why you can't move forward and do something completely different and become great at that. And, I have a lot of people that they ask me, God, I don't understand you. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, you're so awesome. You've made it happen, and it seems so easy for you, and you la la la. All these different things. It's like, guys. When I first got online, I was completely clueless. I didn't know, but I didn't know how to put a picture on a web page. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to message people on Facebook. I didn't know how to do all those things. And when I first thought, hey, I'm going to get online, I'm going to make a living at it, I'm going to, build a blog and figure out how to make money and all of those kinds of things, when I started looking into what was what was going to be required of me to make that happen, I was like, wow. I look at some of these people. I'm like, they're on Google Plus, they're on LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on YouTube, they're on, they're all these different places, blog, and they have this and they have that, and I'm like, how can I possibly ever get to that point, right? It's too overwhelming. And yet here I am, this amount of time later, it's been a number of years, and and I have the exact same thing, and it wasn't a matter of I couldn't do it. It was a matter of I had to make those mistakes along the way. I had to learn those different platforms. I didn't do it all in one day. I didn't do it all at once. It was every little thing that I've done has been a process. And it was the same thing when when I became a pet groomer. Before I became a pet groomer, somebody asked me, they were like, why don't you groom dogs? And I'm like, I couldn't do that. I'm not creative. I'm not artistic. That's an artistic thing, and yet then there was 10, 15 years later, and turning out absolutely beautiful work and working with dogs that no one else could work with, and it wasn't because I just had a natural tendency to do that. It was because I learned how to do it through trial and error. I turned out some pretty haircuts when I first started grooming. I got bit by a lot of dogs when I first started grooming. But if I had said, oh, I just got bit by a dog, I can't do this, and quit, then I would have never become a stylist. And the same thing goes with business. If I had quit that first time that my YouTube got shut down, if I had quit the first time I made a video and I was looking at myself going, oh my God, you look like an idiot, if I had quit, then to ultimately want to go, and I know a lot of you out there are working towards what you ultimately want as well. You just have to allow to make those mistakes, because it's part of the learning process. And the thing is you got to look back on what you have accomplished in your life and realize that you were amazing at that because you started out as a beginner, you became an intermediate, you worked up to becoming an expert, and it happened over time. It didn't happen overnight, it happened over time. And if you can remember that, and remember the times when you have successes and when things turn out great, I can't tell you, there's a number of times in my grooming career where really tragic things happen. I was going along and I was trimming on a dog's ear, and I ended up cutting the dog's ear. Well, I felt horrible about that. I mean, just absolutely horrible. It was like I would have rather have cut my own finger off than cut this poor little dog's ear. But it was a mistake that I made, and if I'd have quit because I did that, then I would have never moved forward in my career. But mistakes happen, things happen in your life, but I had to think back. Okay, no, I've done all these hundreds of dogs previously too, and not ever cut a dog, and so I can remember that and knew that I was capable of doing it without cutting the dog, right? So that's kind of the thing. It's like we have to remember those past successes and realize that what we're capable of, so that we don't allow those little mistakes to stop us in our tracks and keep us from moving forward in our lives. I just wanted to also just welcome Dennis and Zach, and let's see, somebody else jumped on here. I saw it. Sharon. Hey, Sharon. Well, welcome, guys. I know I gave out some welcomes to the other folks that were on here before, and I just wanted to say welcome to you as well. Catherine, did you want to add some into what we've been talking about?
Well, I can totally relate, Dan, because
Can't hear you.
Oh,
there you are.
Am I there now? Can you hear me? Okay. I can so relate, Dan, because as you know, I was a nurse for 20 years, and not only did I work 12-hour shifts in the hospital, but I also did home health at the same time, taking care of the babies after they went home on their ventilators and stuff, and then I often did agency work in between, so I was usually working 2 or 3 jobs, but as a nurse. And that's what I did. I was on call 24/7. I did transport, and that's, I mean, other than my family, of course, and unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons why I love what I'm doing now because it allows people to spend more time with their families. You know, I thought I was doing the best thing and keeping a roof over my kid's head at the time, but looking back, maybe we could have done with a little less roof and a lot more time together. But at the time, you know, you always do what you do at the time with best intention. So, but that's who I was. I was a nurse, and when I had my accident, you know, I went from being a nurse who did all these, who worked 3 jobs and still found time to go hiking or bicycling or motorcycle or horseback riding or whatever. And suddenly I was just in bed and I couldn't help even myself, much less anybody else. And it was some tough times there. You know, I had to figure out who I was. And isn't it strange how we always can focus? You know, we could have 15 things go right in the day and 1 wrong thing, and somehow we always tend to focus on that wrong thing instead of all of the right things. So as I was getting my body back and learning how to use it again and strengthening it up, there were a lot of times when I said, you know, I thought I can't do this. This hurts too much. This whatever. I just can't do this. And I really had to stop. That's why anything, illness, anything is always such a gift to us, because I really had to stop and say, now wait a minute. You learned how to walk one time before, you can learn how to walk again, you know. And now today I actually crack up at myself. People must think I'm absolutely out of my mind, because I totally crack up at myself, because I'll go to do something online. Maybe I want to make a capture page or something, which in the grand scheme of things is pretty insignificant, I just want to say. So, but I'm like trying to figure it out. I'm like, oh, I can't do this. My brain, you know, it's cutting, it just shuts off. Well, I just crack up at myself, because I'm like, seriously, Catherine, you know, look at what you've done in your life. Look at some of the things that you've come through, and you're getting upset over a capture page. You know, I didn't even know what an iPod was a year ago, and now look at all the stuff I'm doing online. So I think we just have to love ourselves a lot more is what we need to do. And just be more patient with ourselves. There was one other thing. Let me flip over here to the book, because there was something that, oh yeah, giving up the sham. I'm not going to find the exact words, but this is another thing that I think, especially in the internet marketing arena, and it's funny because they all tell you, all the leaders will tell you, be yourself, do what you love, and the money will follow. Then right after they say that, they teach you 12 techniques to do, and you think you have to do all those techniques, and that you have to become just like them, and you have to learn how to talk like them, and you have to do your hands, and you have to, you know, there's all these things you got to do, right? And you're basically molding yourself into this other person, which is not who you are, which is why it doesn't work. So you really have to be yourself and take those techniques that they're learning and really wrap those around yourself and the things, you know, the part of yourself that you need to bring to the world. Because as long as you're trying to mold yourself, not that you can't model some behaviors, but you know, you cannot mold yourself into somebody else, and you're just going to find frustration and heartbreak when you do that. So I just want to encourage everybody to let your own light shine, and that's what the world needs from you, and that's what you need from you most of all. And that's why we do all this mastermind work, is to be better, you know, our own better selves, not to be like someone else. That's all. Sorry, I was rambling.
No, that's great, Catherine. Do you want to go ahead and just finish out this this section, and then we can end with the prescription for what is this section? The prescription for self-acceptance.
Okay. Let me get back where I was. Was I at "You Are Not Your Mistakes"? I think that's where I was.
Yeah, that's where you were at.
Okay, thanks. Self-acceptance means accepting and coming to terms with ourselves now, just as we are, with all our faults, weaknesses, shortcomings, errors, as well as our assets and strengths. Self-acceptance is easier, however, if we realize that these negatives belong to us. They are not us. Many people shy away from healthy self-acceptance because they insist on identifying themselves with their mistakes. You may have made a mistake, but this does not mean that you are a mistake. You may not be expressing yourself properly and fully, but this does not mean you yourself are no good. We must recognize our mistakes and shortcomings before we can correct them. The first step toward acquiring knowledge is the recognition of areas where you are ignorant. The first step toward becoming stronger is the recognition that you are weak. And all religions teach that the first step toward salvation is the self-confession that you are a sinner. In the journey toward the goal of ideal self-expression, we must use negative feedback data to correct course, as in any other goal-striving situation. This requires admitting to ourselves and accepting the fact that our personality, our expressed self, or what some psychologists call our actual self, is always imperfect and short of the mark. No one ever succeeds during a lifetime in fully expressing or bringing into actuality all the potentialities of the real self. In our actual expressed self, we never exhaust all the possibilities and powers of the real self. We can always learn more, perform better, behave better. The actual self is nearly imperfect. Throughout life, it is always moving toward an ideal goal but never arriving. The actual self is not static, but a dynamic thing. It is never completed and final, but always in a state of growth. It is important that we learn to accept this actual self with all its imperfections because it is the only vehicle we have. Neurotics reject the actual self and hate it because it is imperfect. In its place, they try to create a fictitious ideal self that is already perfect, has already arrived. Trying to maintain the sham and fiction is not only a terrific mental strain, but it continually leads to disappointment and frustration when people try to operate in a real world with a fictitious self. Prescription: accept yourself as you are and start from there. Learn to emotionally tolerate imperfection in yourself. It is necessary to intellectually recognize our shortcomings, but disastrous to hate ourselves because of them. Differentiate between yourself and your behavior. You are not ruined or worthless because you made a mistake or got off course, any more than a computer is worthless because it makes an error, or a violin because it sounds a sour note. Don't hate yourself because you're not perfect. You have a lot of company in imperfection. No one else is perfect, and those who try to pretend they are become imprisoned in misery. Ooh, that's powerful.
I think that's a good place to stop. And I want to encourage all of you to kind of go back and just read this section again. The part of the self-acceptance, because I think that really is a key to truly being able to become whatever it is we ultimately want to be, by accepting who we actually are and realizing the traits that we have that are beneficial toward that, and then also realize that that we may not have the same traits as someone else who is accomplishing something different, that we have to understand that we've got to work with what we've got. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the saying of work with what you've got, how's it go, work from where you are with what you've got to accomplish I can't remember the last part. Does that sound familiar? But the point is that you've got to just start with where you are and realize that just because you aren't perfect doesn't mean that you can't become the ultimate goal of what it is that you want to become. It's just not a perfection. It's a improvement over time. Does that make sense? I don't know. I'm going to read back through that section again because I think there's a lot that I need to truly understand there. I mean, there's many things that I do fully understand, and then there's other things that I'm kind of like, what exactly is it that they're trying to say in that section? And that's one of those sections I need to really kind of look at again. So guys, I want to just say thank you to everybody who's hanging out there with us, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on what we've been talking about so far. And again, we're in chapter 8. We just ended with the self-acceptance, and we'll be moving on to self-acceptance versus self-rejection next week. And If you're not already a member of our community, jump over to mindsetmasterycollective.com, and I think that what I'll end up doing is I'll take these couple of prescriptions from these two sections and I'll post them in the group under the action assignment area. And if you need a copy of this book, hit me up over in the group and you know, send me your email address, and I'd be happy to send you a PDF version of the new Psycho-Cybernetics. So with that, unless you guys want to add something else. Any thoughts? Final thoughts?
I'll add one quick tip that I heard on a call this week, and I wish I could remember which leader it was. I'm so sorry, but write your challenges. Get out a piece of paper, write all your accomplishments in pen, write your challenges in pencil, and soon you'll be erasing those challenges as you just practice on your skills and your confidence a little bit. And it's a really great thing just to be able to erase that thing. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, I just got one really quick thing to add, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, but it's learning to differentiate. It's the language that you use to describe yourself to yourself. When you're talking to yourself, nobody else is around, and you made a mistake, that you are not that mistake. You are that which acts. You are not the action. And just learning a new language, that when you described something to yourself about yourself, that yeah, I really screwed that up, not I am a screw up, because I am, fill in the blank, is the most powerful words that you can say to yourself. That's why we use positive affirmations. I am strong, I am confident, I'm whatever. And when you use those same words, I am, to describe yourself, I am a loser, I am a mistake, I'm a whatever, fill in blank. When you make a negative statement to yourself, your subconscious mind can't differentiate between a joke and reality. It takes everything seriously. And so just learning to never make an I am statement to yourself about yourself, such as I'm such a screw up, that no, you're not a screw up. You screwed something up, but you're not, excuse me, you are not a screw up. And it's learning that language of how you talk to yourself in order to build yourself up, rather than keep chipping away at the foundations of your own self worth, your own self confidence. So anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for coming today.
That's right, guys. So yeah, take those thoughts to heart. That's very powerful thoughts, because when, like what Dan was saying, is that your subconscious mind doesn't know when you're joking, So if you don't want that to be true about yourself, don't say it as if it is true, because your inner self will believe it and act out that part. So guys, I just want to go ahead and say, thanks for hanging out with us again. This has been an absolutely wonderful Saturday morning mastermind. And again, if you're not a member of the community, jump over to mindsetmasterycollective.com. We get together every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern and to do this hangout. And if you're in that community, you'll get an invitation to get to the right page so you can participate with us. So with that, guys, have a great day and have an absolutely awesome, amazing, wonderful weekend. And we will see you next week. Bye for now.